Hey, what's going on? My name is Bim, and this is the Logitech F710. Now, I know it's an old controller. It's so old that it was packaged in a clamshell, and the manual inside says compatible with Windows 7/8, which is, it should give you an idea of how old it is. But this Logitech is still selling it. Like, it's still on the website. It's still their latest, essentially, controller, if I'm not mistaken. But also, I want to look at this with a modern lens. Does it hold up, especially with the sea of competition that it has today? And let's see if it's worth your time and money. What you see here is essentially everything that comes out of the packaging. But before we go into what I love about the controller, because there's quite a bit to like. Even though it's old and kind of outdated, there's quite a bit to like about it. And a number of things that I could really do without. But before we get into those things, let's talk about build quality and function. So the plastic used in the front shell is pretty good, right? Like, the controllers these days don't really use this kind of plastic anymore. It feels like a toy somewhat. But the back part, this is the business. This is where the money went. This is a soft kind of rubbery plastic, and it feels really good to hold. The front part, not too much. It feels a little cheap, but still, I say cheap, I guess, compared to more modern, more expensive controllers. But for its price especially, it's actually pretty good quality. You've got back and then start buttons. You've got the Logitech button, which pairs it to the dongle. The mode button actually switches the functions between D-pad and the analog stick. Vibration, you press this to kind of set the level of vibration that you like. There's, I think, 3 levels, 1, 2, and 3. And then you've got your standard triggers and your shoulder buttons, face buttons, 2 analog sticks. They do click in, and then you've got your D-pad. And in the back, you've got your dongle. And unfortunately, one of the things I really don't like about it is that it uses AAA batteries. So yes, I mean, these things last a while, right? Because these are the ones that came with the controller, and I've had the controller for a few months now, testing it out and playing games with it. And you could replace this with like rechargeable batteries if you want to be more conscious about the environment. But it still kind of sucks because it does take up quite a bit of space and makes it really chunky. The fact that it uses a dongle is another kind of a bummer, but again, it's old and a lot of modern controllers today use dongles. It's actually pretty nice that, like most Logitech peripherals, right, there's usually a space for their tiny dongle on board the device itself, which is pretty good. All right, let's talk about what makes this controller pretty good. There's a lot to like about it, actually. What makes it still viable in today's gaming landscape? I think primary of which is the D-pad. The D-pad on this thing is so unique. It is so good. And then what makes it unique is actually there's 4 different switches. I'm not sure if they're mechanical switches, but they are very tactile. And you have to hit the switch before you activate the direction. And usually when you see a single piece of plastic like this jutting out of a controller on a third party or a budget controller, usually that means the controller is going to have a terrible D-pad, but not in the case of the F710. The F710 has one of the best D-pads, I think, of all controllers I've ever tried. I know it's a big claim, but trust me, it's super good because of the switch technology that they kind of use. It actually reminds me a lot of the D-pad of the Razer Ryon. Now, the Razer Ryon is even more special because this actually has 8 switches. So for every direction, right, up, down, left, right, up, back, up, forward, down, forward, on, back, has its own switch. So with this, you activate diagonals by activating 2 switches at a time. With this, you just activate the diagonal switch. And if I'm being honest, I kind of like this system better. But yeah, it's really good. It's one of the best features on this controller. Another awesome thing about this controller would be the stick height. Actually, that's more a preference thing. I mean, if you look at the difference in height, you see the difference in height, right? Like if you put it side by side. this is way closer to the body than this. And I feel like it's a little easier to be accurate with a tall stick. I know it's not the difference isn't mind-blowing. So even if you do get control freaks or whatever tall cap for your DualShock 4, it doesn't really make that drastic of a change in accuracy. But I feel like it's easier to be a little bit more accurate, at least, you know, feeling wise, with a tall stick. Unfortunately, that's kind of where the list ends with the things that I like about this controller. So let's talk about the things that, you know, really show its age. I think number one of which would be the ergonomics, the shape. Look at that. Look at these chunky handles and that chunky body. And the way the handles jut out like this, it forces your hand to hold it in a certain way that feels very awkward. See, look at the separation on my fingers like that because of this, right? It doesn't feel comfortable to hold. I know people who like this controller got used to it, but it's a far cry from the ergonomics of the DualShock 4 or any other modern controller out there. It is very, very ergonomically deficient. It is awkward and hard to hold, and sometimes it does impact my play enjoyment. Another thing I don't like would be the face buttons. You know, besides the fact that they are colored the way they are, there is like an indentation down here that, you know, like a crater. I don't know what to call it, but it isn't flat, which makes the buttons jut out higher than I would like. You don't need to press it all the way in. See, they actuate fairly close, but because of this, I don't know what the point is of making them stick out so much. Like if you look at a regular modern controller, look at how close they are to the body. That feels so much better to press, even on the Razer Ryon. See, they're very close. This thing jutting out, it's like a toy. Besides the fact that they're colored like toys. One more thing would be the shape of the sticks. They are mushrooms. They are smooth and they are concave. Yes, concave. Versus, because this is like the PS3, right? The PS3 was shaped like this and it was bad. The DualShock 3. So with the DualShock 4, they learned, they made it convex, right? That there's a divot here that you could use for better grip. And then you've got the shoulder buttons. This barely counts as a trigger. They're tiny. They're small. They're really small. Look at the difference. Right? These are much wider, much nicer to press. These are tiny. Plus the resistance of the triggers on the F710 is pretty harsh. Like they are hard to press. And if you look at the distance, right? If you look at the distance that this is as much as the triggers on the DualShock 4 travel, and this is as much as the travel. This is the travel for the F710. They're pretty similar actually. And I did try this on a game that would require finessing the triggers for driving, but they're so awkward to press because they're so small and they're not shaped like you would expect a trigger to be shaped. Does that impact playstyle? Kind of, right? It doesn't feel good to hold for a long period of time. Instead of actually enjoying, holding this thing, you're kind of compensating for a lot because of the ergonomics. I mean, plus the fact that you need to change out the batteries, that kind of sucks too. But yet again, it's old, yeah, but that really is unfortunate. So is it worth picking up because of the magnificent D-pad and the good sticks? I think not, because of all the other deficiencies it has. I think it would still be better to go with a similarly priced controller with better ergonomics that has a worse D-pad for sure, but this thing just feels very outdated. What Logitech should do is release another controller, the F910 or whatever. Make it very ergonomic. Make the shape similar to something like a Nintendo Switch Pro controller. keep the D-pad, because I think they probably have this like patented, right? Because no one else uses it. Keep the height of the sticks. I mean, if you want to keep the color of the the ugly ass colors of the buttons, do so. But make it closer to the body, make it nicer to press, make these wider, make this feel like a trigger, make it more ergonomic, make it slimmer. Until that happens, I can't really recommend the F710. Not in its, if you want to enjoy actually holding a controller the way I enjoy holding a controller. Unfortunately, that's that. Anyway, that is it for the F710. Hope you guys found it a little informative. Please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. I'll catch you guys in the next one.